Hello. Some people think that there is one problem for us, a man named Putin. Others think there are two problems, Putin and Zelensky. But in reality, there are more. There are more problems. The names of these problems are left-wing European leaders like Macron, like Merz, and most importantly, the witch Ursula von der Leyen. And so that I'm not just making empty claims, let's go straight to the facts together. Look, I'll give you these points verbatim and very briefly, so there's no interpretation from me and you hear the direct speech. Look, on August 17th, Macron makes a statement while speaking on Putin's proposals, offer Ukraine surrender, not peace. The Europeans will ask Trump to what extent he is ready to join the security guarantees. For long-term peace, Ukraine needs a strong army. Hold on a second. Tell us yourself, what security guarantees are you ready to give? Why do you immediately shift it to President Trump? Next. Ukraine needs a strong army, which is an internal matter. Even after the war, we'll need to build a professional army given what's happening now. What does President Trump have to do with this? He'll speak for himself. On August 19, he makes a statement regarding peacekeeping operations. We will have to help Ukraine. Peacekeeping operations are needed, which Ukraine's allies are ready to provide. If the dialogue fails, sanctions against Russia need to be strengthened. Why do they keep repeating the same thing about these sanctions like parrots? He talks about peacekeepers. A couple of days later, the press writes, there will be no peacekeepers. Germany said there will be no peacekeepers. Poland even said there will be no peacekeepers. Italy said there will be no peacekeepers. What are they talking about? Well, peacekeepers are exactly their obligation. President Trump can't tell Europe what to do. He is in charge of America. They don't want to do anything. United States progress centers on joining the security framework. Any agreement without guarantees means Russia will violate it, as in Georgia in 2008 and Crimea in 2014. Everything got mixed up. But with all these statements, Macron always says to fight, to fight. So what's the solution then, to fight? Have you ever heard a proposal from Macron? So have you heard a proposal from Macron, how to end the war? Except for these general phrases like security guarantees and justice, well, it's all clear, but you can't really grasp it. No, Macron is for the war. On September 4th, just recently, on the day the conflict stops, security guarantees will be deployed. 26 countries are prepared to support security forces on land, sea, and air. Not on the front lines, but to send a strategic signal. How should we interpret all this? I like the idea of it happening on the day the conflict stops. So first we stop the conflict and only then do we talk about security guarantees. That's what J.D. Vance said. But Putin told Trump that everything needs to be ended globally right away, not just some kind of ceasefire. Macron's point is unclear. On September 5th, the next day, the coalition of willing countries is prepared to provide security guarantees to Ukraine if a ceasefire occurs. Again, in the event of a ceasefire. So, the issue of a ceasefire is not on the agenda. The issue on the agenda is achieving global peace. And they're just playing with President Trump. They came to Washington and agreed that the ceasefire regime would not be discussed. They return to Europe and continue pushing their agenda. Do you want me to show you undeniable proof of what kind of rot Macron is? Now you'll see proof of all this on your screens. According to the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, in 2024, France paid Russia more than 600 million euros just for liquefied natural gas. And now you're definitely going to be shocked. In total, for the period from February 2022, the month the war began, to December 2024, European Union countries, including France, imported Russian fossil fuels worth more than 205 billion euros. That's 205 billion euros, 1/5 of a trillion. Consider how massive that is. France, Belgium, and Spain remain key entry points for Russian liquefied natural gas. So, what does this mean in the end? That Europe continues to finance Putin. They did nothing when the KGB took power, and then the KGB began to gain strength. And you don't have to be a big CIA agent or some other intelligence officer to understand what Putin wants to do. They didn't just fail to stop him or put Russia on a starvation diet, they simply pumped it full of money. All Ukrainian cities are under attack, with people dying daily. Zelensky doesn't care and would let this war last 10 years to stay in power. We always discuss him separately. Now about these Europeans. And during the war, they bought energy resources from him for 205 billion. He took that money and converted it into missiles and drones. That's it. Ukraine is suffering. And Macron, you know, he'll furrow his brows. Security guarantees are needed. So we need them from America. What did you personally do? President Trump demands that Europeans immediately stop buying any energy resources from Putin, to stop all purchases from Putin. See how it is? They make demands of America, but since Ukraine is on the European continent, Trump says it's more Europe's problem than America's. Of course, it's geopolitics. Of course, Trump won't abandon Ukraine, but in fact, this is Europe. This is Europe's responsibility. They don't want to do anything. They keep trading with Putin. And not just a little bit. It's a colossal amount of money. 205 billion euros. The second handsome one, Merz, we will finish soon. I won't bore you. In an interview with Zweites Deutsches Fernsehen published on the same day, Merz stated that peace cannot be achieved at the cost of Ukraine's sovereignty. He stressed that peace could come if Ukraine surrendered and lost its freedom. But then we would be next. Backing Ukrainian self-defense is still a priority. There was talk about capitulation. At some point, the question was raised about the tricolor in Kyiv, Putin taking all of Ukraine, but that was never the issue. Such a situation is impossible. Do you know why Merz is discussing this? Manipulation. It's just manipulation to make you sit and think that Ukraine's capitulation is on the negotiating table. The fact that they can interpret things their own way. So I have a question. If Putin is so evil, and he is evil, if he is an aggressor, and he is an aggressor, why do you buy energy resources from him? Why do you buy them at a higher price from other countries? Don't feed the beast with money. Merz strongly supports the war and opposes capitulation. Zelensky, go with Macron and Ursula to fight. You don't care about your people. Basically, you are already all covered in blood, drowned there in Ukraine. Well, it's fine. You go ahead. And we in Europe will have a nice meal, drink some beer, French wine, and calmly decide what to do. After all, this is old Europe with its incredible cultural infrastructure. That's a huge sum, historically. Now they're excluding everything. The left ones ruined it. And basically, everything that Macron and Merz are doing has nothing to do with Western civilization, with the values of Western civilization. It's all the left ones, communists, who are the ones destroying everything and setting up Ukraine. But Zelensky and Poroshenko before him keep repeating, we need to join the European Union. Macron, I read to you, was recalling Georgia. Georgia went through a terrible 5 days and understood very well what needs to be taken into account. Georgia and Ukraine have both historically been in inconvenient locations. Depending on perspective, those in power could have used this place to their advantage if they were smarter. Georgia has stopped seeking European Union or NATO membership, which likely wouldn't have happened anyway. There's also no war there. Now the return of annexed territories is being discussed. You see, pro-Russian or not pro-Russian, and I am categorically against what Dmytryk is proposing. And with them, the Union State. There is no annexation, no. But we're saying, if things are that bad, if there's someone like Putin, and we're stuck living next to him as long as he's alive, we need to find something acceptable for everyone. It's unpleasant, of course, it's unpleasant, but these aren't real proposals. It's all a setup against Ukraine. They don't feel sorry for Ukraine, for the people, for anyone or anything. Next, I'm reading this in chronological order. Germany has postponed the decision on military aid, but is increasing funding and training. Germany is ready to increase funding, provide additional training to Ukrainian forces, but has postponed the decision on deeper military involvement. And until there is clarity regarding the role of the United States in this strategic situation. This was on September 4th, a few days ago. Again, Merz, you see, this is collusion, pure collusion. They're turning to the United States again, demanding Trump to impose sanctions on Russia. But what sanctions has the European Union imposed? Ursula, what sanctions, truly serious ones, have you imposed on Russia? You buy resources from them for huge amounts of money, but you demand sanctions from President Trump. Right here in September, at the beginning of September, Merz called Putin possibly the most serious war criminal of our time and considered silence or concessions unacceptable. He expressed the idea of holding negotiations on Ukraine in Geneva within a group of like-minded countries. The Kremlin responded sharply, saying that Merz's opinion no longer matters in the context of negotiations. Putin is a war criminal. Concessions aren't acceptable. What does Merz suggest? Are concessions good or bad? Bad, but I think they're acceptable since there's no other choice. Otherwise, Ukraine will have problems it won't be able to handle. If the war goes on like this for another year, and going back to what's happening in Europe, the issue of Islamization needs to be discussed separately. But Germany is in crisis. Social states, this is a direct quote from Merz, social states as we know them today are no longer economically viable, considering what we produce as a national economy. So, Merz publicly admitted to the economic crisis in Germany, roughly speaking, simply put. Expenses exceed income, and they exceed it seriously and catastrophically. Because they brought in illegal migrants, gave them subsidies, and they are killing people. In Germany, a lot of Ukrainians have been killed. Recently, a young girl was killed in Germany, and this guy was supposed to be deported. The document said he should have been deported, but the government didn't act, and he killed our Ukrainian girl who was fleeing the war and working there. For example, those Islamists killed 16-year-old basketball players, 2 boys who were playing there. They don't care about any of this. They're in an economic crisis. Macron is in a political crisis. Things are shaky under Macron right now. His ratings are falling. This is the result of their policies. This is the result of their policies. Can people like that give us advice? Do we want advice from people like that? Next. Latest statistics show Poles are returning from Germany to Poland as the Polish economy rapidly grows. No one needs Germany anymore. There are no Islamists in Poland. In Berlin, according to the results of 2024, Mohammed is the most common name. That is, newborn boys are most often named Mohammed in Germany. Do you understand what this will lead to? Europe won't exist in 15-20 years. I won't bore you about Starmore anymore. In Britain, simply monstrous things are happening there. And there, the foreign minister is basically an Islamist as well. These people are currently only few realize this. These things are the most frightening. We don't need instructions from such rulers who have ruined their own countries or are siding with those who want to build a caliphate in Europe. Thank you. We shouldn't listen to them. And Zelensky needs the European Union as a security guarantee. He needs the European Union, remember this for Zelensky, to go to the elections. Look, I brought Ukraine into the European Union. Let's ignore that half the country is gone, like in his television series. We'll leave that aside. That's the European Union. Do you need the European Union? Where's Ursula sends those illegal migrant Islamists to Ukraine too? Insane taxes, crazy bureaucratization. If the president isn't their choice, like in Romania, they'll label him pro-Russian and redo the elections until their candidate wins. Who would support such a policy? A 23-year-old Ukrainian girl was recently killed in America. The suspect had been detained by the court. 14 times he was released, each time. Who? The judges, Democrats funded by Soros. No major media outlet is covering this, all because of Soros. Where are your Lachini, Sternenko? They're also Pritulas. No one is covering anything. The media isn't covering it. It's all USAID, Soros, all of this. It's their job. The war is split, 50% Putin, 50% they. Zelensky is among the globalists, basically their puppet. I hope I've given you some food for thought today. These are just facts that you can easily verify. So next time you see people like Merz or Macron on television, remember, they want war and don't care about Ukraine. But there's also good news at the end. According to all polls, right-wing forces are leading in France, Britain and Germany. The ADF party is already in first place. However, before the local elections, mysteriously, 6 members of the Alternative for Germany party died. In Britain, Reform United Kingdom is leading. Nigel Farage says all illegal migrants will be deported. Well, like I said, in France, Macron's position is shaky. And as soon as right-wing leaders come to power in Europe, everything will change seriously. All of this will be gone. And then Ukraine will also have completely different issues to resolve with them, and not just be a proxy in this situation. Thank you for watching until the end. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and I look forward to your comments on what you've heard. Thank you all. Goodbye.